Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to Hitting the Road in an EV, our PSE virtual event dedicated to electric vehicles. Thanks for joining today. So my name is Megan Lochter. I'm a program manager on our community involvement team, and I support our electric vehicle program. I have been with PSC for 5 years, and I'm actually also an EV owner. I have a 2015 Nissan Leaf that I bought after one of our guests on one of these virtual events convinced me to buy it. So I'll hand it over to Adam.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name is Adam Crawford. I'm the outreach manager over in Kittitas County. I've been working for PSC for about 12 years, and my wife and I purchased a used Nissan Leaf back in 2020. So we have a little bit of experience with EVs.
Hi, I'm Michael Harthorn. I'm the marketing manager for our various electric vehicle programs here at PSE. I've been here for a few years, and I enjoy cruising around on my electric bicycle.
My name is Anne Flickinger, and I am a proud owner of an Ioniq 5 that we got back in January. So, yeah.
Great. And then Adam, I'll have you take it from here.
Yep. All right, we'll go on to the next slide. This is one of the important slides of this webinar. And so everybody that is in attendance today has been entered into winning one of two of our prizes. And so these are a Pendleton motor robe. So essentially it's a blanket you can keep in your car. It goes really well with our safety moment. So as we're preparing for winter, this would be a good thing to keep in your car for emergencies. For those winners, they'll also receive PSE goodies. And if you are the winner, you will receive an email later today. So good luck to everybody that's on this call. All right, here is our first of two polls. The question is, how likely is it that your next car will be an EV? So you'll see that poll pop up on your screen. Go ahead and take a look at one of those. If something fits, you can go ahead and choose that. Or if it's something else, go ahead and put that into the chat. I'm going to go ahead and pose this question over to Michael. So how likely is it that your next car will be an electric vehicle?
I would say it's some version of number 4 there, definitely in the next 3 to 5 years. I currently have a little Prius C that's still chugging along. And like I said, I have an electric bicycle that I enjoy. But as soon as it's time to replace that Prius C, I'll definitely be getting an electric vehicle.
Excellent. Yeah, I know for us, even though we have a Leaf, we're always looking at all the new and upcoming EVs, and that Ford Lightning is looking pretty promising, maybe in the next 3 to 5 years. Let's go ahead and close that poll and take a look at where we're at. So coming in at number 1 with 40% is I'm taking my time to research. Coming in second at 25% is maybe in the next 3 to 5 years. So thanks everybody for participating in that poll. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Michael, and we'll get into some more details about electric vehicles.
That's right. So firstly, why we're here is PSE wants to make it as easy as possible for our customers to switch to an electric vehicle. It's important for both the climate and also as Washington State looks to begin phasing out the sale of gas-powered cars in 2030. It's going to be important for our customers to have as many advocates as possible to make it easy to switch to an electric vehicle when the time comes. So other than that pending 2030 deadline, why should you go electric? Number 1, you can save money. Savings on gas and maintenance mean it can be cheaper to own an EV. Especially with gas prices rising and a relatively affordable electricity in Washington State, you can save a lot on fuel every month. Electric vehicles are better for the environment. That holds true according to many studies, even when you factor in battery mining and car manufacturing. Obviously, that complicates it, but with the reduction in emissions, and battery technology improving, that holds true. And also, EVs are fun to drive. No one wants to buy a car if they're not going to enjoy driving it, if it's going to be a chore. Luckily, electric vehicles have fun technology. They feel zippier. For anyone who hasn't tried one, you might be shocked at how quick the acceleration is. Let's talk a little bit more about the savings. As you can see on the screen there, a study from Consumer Reports found that EV ownership can be up to $10,000 less over the lifetime of a vehicle when compared to gas-powered cars. That's probably increased. That study is now a few years old. Gas prices were less back then. Fuel maintenance, as I've already mentioned, are a major part of that. You can see on the right there a comparison with current gas prices and electricity prices between a Ford Mustang Mach-E and a comparable gas-powered car. So those are considerable annual fuel savings. Another source of savings are tax credits and incentives. This is probably what we're asked about most often at PSC. We currently don't have any for vehicles on our own, but that will change in the next year or so. In the meantime, there are federal and state tax incentives. You can see those on the screen. The federal one got a little more complicated recently with the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act. The gist is you can save up to $7,500 on your income tax bill, though there are a lot of restrictions. That's around where cars are made, where battery minerals are coming from. So there are lists online that you can find about which cars qualify. A little secret to that, though, is those restrictions are kind of out the window if you lease a vehicle, which many people do. At that point, it's just up to the individual auto manufacturers about whether they pass the tax credit onto you, which many of them do. On the state sales tax exemption side, you can save up to $975 on a new vehicle and up to $1,040 on a pre-owned. Those incentives expire in 2025, so hopefully there will be more coming. So what everyone was here to talk about is hitting the road in an EV. We're going to start by talking about charging for everyday driving. Electric vehicles, something people don't really consider when we talk about electric vehicles because they're used to stopping at the gas station, is that fueling an EV can actually be more convenient for everyday driving. Now, that's not necessarily true for road trips, but for everyday driving, they can be more convenient, especially if you're about the American average, which drives about 30 miles per day. So let's talk about what charging at home looks for everyday driving. You can charge overnight, be ready to go in the morning. That's where the convenience comes in. You also don't need to purchase any special equipment, which is a common misconception. You can plug your electric vehicle into any standard outlet. That's called level 1 charging. You're not going to get a very fast charge, about 2 to 5 miles of range per hour of charging. But if you charge overnight and, like I said, drive about 30 miles a day, you should be set. I know a lot of my coworkers on this call just use level 1 charging at home. If you'd like a faster charge or drive more often, you can upgrade to a level 2 charger. You're going to need an electrician to come and install that. Requires a 240 volt outlet. You can get up to 25 miles of range per hour of charging with that. You'll also see level 2 chargers at workplaces, multifamily properties, and public charging stations. If you don't have a single family home, it can be a little more complicated. Luckily, many apartments and condos offer electric vehicle charging. If they don't already, we recently launched our Up and Go Electric for Multifamily program. You can pass that along to your property manager. We are offering pretty hefty incentives, up to 100% of the cost to install charging at multifamily properties. So that's pretty exciting. Let's see, moving on. If you can't charge at home, this is the case for me. I live in a townhouse that does not have dedicated parking, so I don't have an option to plug an electric vehicle into my house. This makes it a little more complicated, but definitely still doable. A lot of workplaces are now offering electric vehicle charging, and similar to our multifamily program, we are now offering Up and Go Electric for Workplace, where we're covering up to 100% of the cost to install charging at workplaces for employee use. So if you have a workplace that you'd like to see install charging, let them know about that program. You can also use public charging. This is going to be more expensive than charging at home. It's also going to be faster. So that's something to consider. We usually like to say save public charging for longer road trips just due to that cost and also because of potential adverse effect on battery lifetime. but it's an option out there. There's also free charging you can find. Websites like plugshare.com can show you where chargers are located, and you can filter by free. Also, if you talk to anybody who's been driving an electric vehicle for any length of time, they usually have some tips. I worked an event last week where I talked to a lot of electric vehicle owners, and they're letting me know about free charging available at different libraries or on college campuses after hours. So if you know where to find the free charging, it's out there. So here's an example of what PlugShare looks like. You can see just how many chargers are out there. A lot of people are surprised at just what kind of charging opportunities are available. So I definitely recommend playing around with that website. So what about when you're not doing your normal everyday driving? You want to take a road trip. That is definitely possible in an electric vehicle. It's going to require a little bit more planning and a little bit extra time, but it's definitely a possibility. So one reason it's a possibility is that EV ranges are rapidly increasing. People are kind of shocked about what the median ranges are at this point. You can see there, it was only 82 miles of median range per EV a decade ago. 5 years ago, that increased to 213. Now you're getting 277 miles of median range for an EV just priced under $50,000. So not even including those higher cost, longer range vehicles. So that little graphic there shows you just a handful of the EVs you can get for under $50,000 that have ranges over 250 miles. Another thing you can do if you want to take a road trip in an electric vehicle is use tools like a Better Route Planner at betterrouteplanner.com. This will show you where charging stations are located, plan your route for you, tell you how long you'll need to charge at each stop, what your percentage of battery life will be when you get there and when you leave. It's super helpful. You can see on the left there, I've planned a road trip to San Francisco in a Nissan Ariya. You're going to spend about 2 hours of charging across 4 stops. You'll get to your destination in a little extra time, but you'll get there. That's an easy one, you say. We're traveling down the West Coast where there's a lot of charging infrastructure. What if I want to go somewhere a little more rural? So you can see there on the right, I've planned a road trip to Yellowstone in that same vehicle. And you can see all the charging times and stops added up there. So it's not too bad. You'll stop for lunch. A neat thing about the Better Route Planner is you can also filter for only stations that are near restaurants. So if you do want to take snack breaks during each of these charging stops, it's definitely a possibility. And that is my portion about hitting the road in an electric vehicle. I'll transfer it over to Adam.
All right. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate that. Here is poll number 2. So our final poll. If you're considering a new electric vehicle, what's your biggest consideration? Is it that it's better for the environment? Maybe there's the state and federal incentives, savings on taxes, fuel, and maintenance, cool tech, or is there something else? And if there is, you can go ahead and put that in the chat. I'm going to hand this question off to Megan.
Yeah, let's see. So I think obviously I want to answer like all of the above, right? But I have to choose one. And I would say that I already have the pre-owned 2015 Nissan Leaf, which doesn't have a lot of range. So the next EV that I'm considering, and we're looking pretty seriously, is a vehicle that will have more range. So I guess I would, if I pushed, I'm going to have to choose number 5, how much range I'll need, because we want a vehicle that we can like drive on road trips or take camping. And so, yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I think we're kind of in the same boat. Having a used Nissan Leaf that gets about 100 miles per charge. It'd be nice to have a little bit extra range.
But it's
all
like
right,
after you get a taste of driving the EV, then you like want to take it like far, right? You want to drive it a lot. So that's what I'm looking for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and close that poll. I see coming in first, it's better for the environment. That was at 32%. And closely following that is savings on taxes, fuel, and maintenance. So thanks everybody for participating. We'll go ahead and get into my personal favorite portion of this. Let's go ahead and chat with our EV driver. So you already met Anne earlier. She bought her first all-electric car in mid-January. It is a 2023 Hyundai Ioniq 5, and she loves the spaciousness, go power, the look, which I'm also a big fan of. And you don't have to go to a gas station and fuel up anymore. So Anne, first of all, thanks so much for being here and taking the time out of your day. We appreciate that.
Sure.
Yeah, well, let's jump into it. So I'm going to start off with a two-part question. First question is, why did you first explore buying an EV compared to a gas vehicle? And then to follow up with that, what made you choose the EV that you have?
So I previously owned a Subaru, and it was starting to have head gasket issues and leaking into various places. Say the radiator was getting oil in it. So we had already been kind of looking at EVs, and this kind of catapulted it into looking way more seriously. So we had gone to the expo, like Electrify Expo, and went and test drove, I think, the Volvo and the Volkswagen, so the ID4 and I want to say the like recharge something for Volvo. And so we really were looking into having the most like footroom and car space, because we're a family of 4 with a dog. And so it was definitely space, and we don't like to all be cramped up next to each other. So that's mainly what catapulted us into doing EV, and why we picked the car we did. So
Yeah.
we didn't, the Ioniq 5 was not at that car show, and so we didn't get a chance to drive it. So when they started getting into the dealerships, we had the opportunity, because I was told, don't drive my other car for very far because you don't know if it's gonna die.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Unfortunate.
we're like, okay, so I'm gonna drive the car just down to the dealership and test drive the Ioniq 5, and we bought it that day. So
Oh, very good.
mhm,
Yep, sold.
sold. So and the only reason we didn't go for the Ioniq 6 was since we have our dog, the cargo space in the back is a little bit more headroom for the dog, even though currently the dog is not allowed in the car because it's a new car. And I'm like, no.
It's still new. Yeah, that might
It's
change
still
in the
new.
future.
Yeah.
Great. No, that's interesting. What is the number one tip you'd give someone looking at EV ownership, just from your experience of purchasing yours?
I guess don't have the range anxiety. I know it's really something that stops people from looking into EVs. Like, oh, well, what if I can't go to the grocery store and then go take my kids to the swim practice and then have to go drive to Seattle and back, and like, do I have enough
Right.
battery? Like, yeah, you do. That's fine. Most people don't drive like 300 miles a day, and so yeah.
Yep. Well, getting into that, what's your charging routine like? Are you charging at home every night or when you're out on the road?
So since we purchased in January through Electrify America, we have 2 years of free charging at any of the Electrify America stations. So we've charged those stations. I think there's one in particular that's near our house, and we only do that if I run the battery down to like 30%, so it's just a faster charge. But other than that, I have a level 1 at home that just came with the car, and we just plug it in next to the car. We have a garage, so it's
Excellent.
very easy. Mhm.
Yeah, I know for us, when we purchased our Nissan Leaf, wondering what our charging routine was going to be like and where the public chargers were, and if we're going to take any road trips with it. And for my wife, she travels about 40 miles per day. She's able to either charge it here overnight, or if the garage is busy with other things happening, she's able to charge at work. And so it works out really nice for that 40-mile trip. Okay. Have you experienced charging publicly, and what was that charging experience like?
So usually the one place that we go to charge publicly, some of the, I would call them pumps, but they're not really pumps, but they look like pumps. Some of the charging stations, I don't know, the maintenance on it has not been all that great, but maybe there's definitely one free charger that's just a level 1 plug-in, but people are there for a while because it takes a long time. And then there's a couple of high-speed level 3 chargers, and then I think 2 level 2s right in that section or bank of chargers. So there have been a lot of people charging at that bank of stations. So sometimes it's full and sometimes you have to wait for, I don't know, like 20 minutes. It's usually not that long, but there are definitely at least one out of every charging bank that's out of order or needs updating or is not charging as fast as it said it should.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I live out in Ellensburg, and we have some public charging stations around, and once in a while we'll go out to charge and it's either busy or it is out of service. And so it's definitely something that we're aware of when we're out publicly charging. And some of the apps that my wife has and she uses can help keep us up to date with what's happening with some of those.
I do always keep my eye on the stations as I drive by.
Yes.
Even though I don't have to stop, I'm like, oh, how many spots are there? Like, yeah. So
just keeping that in mind, just in case. Well, so you had mentioned range anxiety before, and it sounds like you're dealing with it pretty well. How, when you were looking at purchasing an EV, how much did that come into play with your purchase?
It came in, it was a fairly big part of the decision, because I didn't want it to be stuck with like, oh, I have to go like this far and then charge and then and just not know how far you can go. But I think in my mind everything is really far apart, and then in reality it's not. So I'll give you one example. So I don't plug my car in every night. It's sometimes every other day or every third day, like, oh, my battery's getting down to like 40%. I'll plug it in. And it takes probably about 2 nights to give it a full charge up to 80%. And I hadn't charged my car in 2 days, and we had friends come into town and they wanted to go up to the like Tulalip outlet stores. So I was like, and I offered to drive, and then I was like, oh, my battery's at like 50%. And so we went up there, and I was like looking at the battery level the whole time, and really by the time we got back it was like at 30%. So we still could go for a lot more miles. So yeah,
so one of the worst experiences we had is when we had plugged the car in to charge overnight and it wasn't plugged into the wall outlet, and we didn't catch that. And so when we went to leave to go somewhere and we only had 40% charge, I needed more than that. So that was a valuable lesson for us, and we were able to luckily get to where we needed to go.
So with the Ioniq 5, it's nice because there's sort of a light box that shows it like doing its charging, and it also verbally tells you charging has started. So it's
so it's hard to miss.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, so I know your vehicle's relatively new. Have you had to deal with any maintenance, any tires or windshield wipers or anything bigger than that?
No, there is one software update that I have to go take it in for, which comes up in October.
Okay.
But other than that, I haven't done any tires, any air filters, which I'll have them do when I turn it in to the
Yep.
dealership.
Yeah,
But that's it.
we have 30,000 miles on ours, and we just had to do the tires earlier this year. And the only other maintenance that we've had, and we take it in yearly, is windshield wipers and a new battery, just the 12-volt battery. And so it's been a lot easier and cheaper to maintain that than it has been our truck, which
Oh yeah,
has had a little bit more than that.
yeah. So I'm only at like 4,600, almost 4,700 miles. So yeah, I don't drive it a huge amount, but when I do, I do. So from January till now, it's not many miles on there, but
Okay. So getting into that, how far have you ever driven it?
so that story with the Tulalip outlet
Okay.
stores,
Yep.
probably I don't know, like it's 50 miles up from where I live up there, and all the driving I had done before that was
Okay.
probably another like 50 miles. So yeah, probably about 100
Excellent.
miles altogether.
Well, and you bought yours in January. So how was your experience with driving it in the winter? I know for us being over here in Eastern Washington, it gets really cold during the winter. And we've noticed that when we're driving, when it's 20 degrees out, our battery doesn't have as much charge, or it depletes faster than it would when it's 70 degrees out. And so that's one of the things we plan for when we're driving in the winter. But have you had any experience with that?
Um, it's actually kind of funny when we bought the car, it was January 19th, and like the day that we bought it, it had started to snow, and
Mhm.
so and then 3 days later it snowed again, and it felt like it was like attracting snow, and it's such a heavy car, so I didn't notice any slipping.
Yeah.
So that was great. And I did notice the battery though, it it depleted like a couple percentages more than what I thought it would. So
Okay.
kind of like seeing the battery and then like, oh, wait a minute, was it? I thought it was just like
Yeah.
3% higher an hour ago. So
Yeah,
it,
definitely something you watch and you plan for when you're driving
mhm,
an electric vehicle.
mhm,
All right, we got one more question for you.
mhm.
In your experience, what is the best part about owning an electric vehicle?
Um, the looks I get are quite interesting. You don't know if you can show the picture, but I have got I debadged it. So the Hyundai symbol, I swapped it out for the four Morse code dots, and it's an H in Morse code, which actually matches the what's on the horn, H
Oh,
horn,
nice.
on
Mhm.
the steering wheel. So people walk by on crosswalks, and they kind of look at the car, and then they do a double take, and it's just like, I don't know if it's just shocking to see something that doesn't have like a normal symbol, but yeah, people think it looks very space agey,
Yep.
and but I also like the zippiness of it because you can pass people, and on the freeway, just like you're already going fast, and then you,
Uh-huh.
you could just take it up a notch and just go straight past someone, without having the whole gas like and
Yeah,
like the ramp up of and fuel injection and all that. So yeah.
excellent. Yeah, I'm super glad you're here to share that experience, especially coming from a gas engine and relatively new to electric vehicles. That's really the experience that we're looking for, and just appreciate you spending some time here with us today. If you'll hang out for a little bit longer, we're going to get to the Q&A section, and maybe we'll have some questions for you.
Sure.
All right. So Just a reminder for everybody, you can browse models, incentives, and charging stations at our website, ev.pse.com. If you do have any questions that come up and maybe after the webinar is over, you have something, you can email us. Or if you want to sign up for our Up and Go Electric newsletter that Michael puts out every month, really keeps you up to date on incentives and what's happening with electric vehicles and PSE, you can go to that website. So at this time, I'll hand it back to Megan and we'll get into the Q&A section.
Awesome, thank you. So we do have some questions just based on the conversation with Anne and Adam. So Adam, when you said you had to do the tires at 30,000 miles, did that mean just rotating them or did you have to get new ones?
We bought the car with 20,000 miles. And so I don't know what kind of driving it saw before that. But we replaced them, all 4 of them, at 30,000 miles. And when we take our Leaf in for its yearly, just like maintenance checkup, they rotate the tires for us. And so we're making sure to rotate those every year.
Great. And then if you can address this, maybe we had a question about repair costs and whether there are enough mechanics or shops available to fix EVs. So I don't know, Adam or Michael, if you want to jump in on that.
So just talking from my personal experience, we haven't had any major maintenance issues with it. I mean, I think the biggest one was our 12-volt battery died. And so trying to figure out some of the systems with the battery going dead, and we didn't know exactly what was happening with it. And then the other issue we had is one of our tires was losing pressure, especially during the winter. And so we had to fill that up pretty consistently just to get it up to the proper PSI. That was the only maintenance issues we had. And if we were to have a major issue, we'd take it back to the Nissan dealership.
Yeah, I was going to say the Nissan dealership, they send like coupons and appointment reminders and all kinds of things. But we have also brought ours to an independent mechanic who has like ability to work on EVs. So for me, it hasn't been much of an issue, but I also haven't had a lot of maintenance issues. So let's see. Anne, we had a question for you about software updates. Do you happen to know if you have to take your vehicle in for all the software updates, or can some of them be done remotely?
So usually it is done remotely, but this particular software update had something to do with safety, something. It was sort of part of a recall with just having to do a manual update, which will take a couple hours, and there's no cost for it for this particular one.
Yeah, and I don't believe there are costs for software updates. Does anybody else know the answer to that? No. Great. Let's see. We did have a question. Maybe this is a good one for Michael. We have an attendee who has a PHEV on order. So he is wondering how that compares to an all-electric, and if we can kind of talk about the differences there.
Sure. I believe he asked if it was worth him to be on this call, and hopefully that question has been answered for him by now just by being on this call. But for anyone who doesn't know, there's two types of electric vehicles. One is BEV, which is battery only electric vehicle, and the other is PHEV, plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. So that's not like a Prius, it's a hybrid that you do plug into the wall and has a battery that can get you electric range of, 20 to 50 miles usually. We tend to only focus on battery electric vehicles during these events, mostly because they're far more popular than plug-in hybrids. About 80% of the electric vehicles in Washington are battery only, not plug-in hybrid. Plug-in hybrids can be a good stepping stone if you're interested in electric vehicles but don't want to fully commit to it. I've talked to customers who don't do a ton of driving and haven't filled the tank more than twice a year with their plug-in hybrid just because it gets 30 miles electric range. They drive to the grocery store, come back, charge it right back up. The downside there is you don't get the maintenance savings you see with electric vehicles because you do have to take care of both a gas engine and an electric engine at that point. I would expect, based on what I'm hearing, that plug-in hybrids are being phased out in the next couple of years, that manufacturers aren't going to be making them as much either due to the popularity issue. But like I said, it can work for a lot of people. It's a nice stepping stone if you're not ready for a full battery. We just don't tend to focus on them.
Yeah, I'll jump in. The first time I drove a plug-in hybrid was probably close to 10 years ago, but I really enjoyed that experience because you do get that electric vehicle feel for the first 30 or 40 miles. And then once you're out of that charge, anytime you can go fill up with gasoline. So if you're a little nervous about making that EV jump, that might be a good way to start off.
Yeah, I would add to that. My parents, they were kind of early on owners of a plug-in hybrid electric, and they love it. They're now on their second one. Their first one, they leased it and then ended up buying it. And so, yeah, I think it's like it's a comfortable way for folks to kind of dip their toes into electric.
My parents also just bought a hybrid.
Did they?
Yeah, they didn't want to go full EV, just was a little fearful for them. They're in their 70s, so yeah, they went with the hybrid.
Right. Any feedback on insurance costs Anne, do you want to weigh in on that? Did you see any big spike by going electric?
Not insurance wise, no.
Right. And I will say, I always like to add this anecdote is I don't drive a lot. And so we are on a pay per mile insurance. And it's been a huge cost savings for us. So in fact, when we do take a trip, we're like, oh, we drove a lot this month, but yeah, so if you're not a big driver, it's something to look into. So we do have some questions about the PSE grid. And I'm wondering if, Michael, you could respond to some of those. So there's a question, how is PSE preparing for the additional electrical demand from a larger percentage of electrical vehicles on the road? How do we expect to remain ahead of the demand?
Short answer, yes. We have a lot of smarter people than myself at PSE working on this issue, who could speak to it a lot more in depth than I can. But there's a number of things we're doing. Overall, we're working to improve the grid, both from a climate perspective and from a reliability perspective. That's the kind of stuff that smarter folks than I are working on and tell me that they are confident about dealing with this electric vehicle increase. The other things we're working on is we ran a pilot program encouraging customers to charge when demand on the power grid is lowest, our EV driving customers, I should say. And those times are in the middle of the afternoon, like a day before people are off work. So like 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. or overnight, like 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. That's when it's healthiest for the grid to charge your electric vehicle. And so we did a pilot program seeing what it would take to get our EV driving customers to make that change. That's a program that we have now wrapped up, and we'll be rolling out full-fledged programs to most of our customers, especially our EV driving customers, focused on really increasing when folks charge. I don't have a lot of details I can offer about that now. These programs are going to roll out in the next year or two. If you sign up for the electric vehicle newsletter, you'll know more as soon as I do. Otherwise, it's just one of the many ways we're working on it. But like I said, if you talk to people who are more smart than I am, they'll tell you that PSE is confident about the electric vehicle grid. We have a lot of people working on it.
Great. And then we did have a question about what happens in a power outage, and is it logical or possible for a family to depend on an EV as their only car?
There's so many variables to that.
There are.
It depends on what kind of power outage it is. Like, is it an ice storm? Is it during the middle of the summer? Is it created from a wildfire? How often are you going to be using that electric vehicle? Is it your only source for transportation? And so it's kind of a difficult question to answer with all those different variables. From my personal perspective, we're lucky enough to have an EV and a gasoline engine. And so if we had a prolonged power outage, we'd be able to use that gas powered vehicle for that. I do know some of the newer vehicles like the Ford Lightning, if you purchase a special edition, you can actually run your house for a limited amount of time base from that battery pack. Of course, you're not going to be able to use that vehicle for transportation, but you'll be able to keep some of the essential stuff in your home operating.
Great. Thank you for answering that. I think that with that, we'll move on to charging. We have a lot of charging questions. So I kind of kept those in their own section. So I think, Michael, you mentioned a negative impact on battery life resulting from using public DC chargers. Can you go into that a little bit more?
Yep, definitely. So this is something that most studies agree there's an impact. There's a disagreement about how much of an impact on battery life there is from using DC fast chargers. So in general, for battery health with an electric vehicle, you want to avoid using DC fast chargers exclusively for your charging needs. Try to limit them for road trips or when you absolutely need quick charge. It can reduce the amount of capacity the battery has over its lifetime. Another thing that you'll want to do is avoid charging the electric vehicle fully to 100%. The good news is you can set via your vehicle, or if you have a level 2 charger via the charger, you can say just charge to 90% and stop. You don't have to worry about turning off the charging right before it gets to 100 yourself or anything. You can leave it plugged in. It'll stop charging at whatever percentage you've told it to stop charging at. And then back to DC fast chargers. I mean, not just for battery health, but for your wallet, you would also want to limit how often you're using them. Because usually when you do find free chargers that are the level 2, you'll be paying a little bit, well, considerably more than you would to charge at home at most public DC fast charging stations.
To add on to that, there was a question about whether, because I know some cars don't come with that ability to charge it only up to a certain limit. When it is fully charged, do you need to make sure to unplug it, or can you just leave it plugged in? I just leave mine plugged in all the time when I'm not driving it. So I'm just wondering if there's a best practices.
We're the same for that. We'll leave it plugged in overnight. If we're going away for a long time, we're taking like a week vacation, we'll leave the leaf charged anywhere from, I think it's 30% up to about 80% in that range. And so we don't leave it at 100% for a prolonged time, only if we're going to be driving it the next day. And that's just to prolong that battery health.
Okay. I do. I just leave mine plugged in.
Well,
And
we'll compare ours later and see what's
Yeah.
happening.
I haven't had any major. I think maybe we've lost like 1 mile, maybe, of range. And maybe you could, from your experience, share how is charging on public chargers when you're like, do you generally have to wait a while? Do you try to go somewhere where there's something that you can do? I know one of our commenters said that they really value their time. So wondering what your experience has been with that.
So the public place that we go, usually there's a Target right nearby, which you can spend so many hours in Target, which it really only takes about less than 20 minutes to fill up the charge and fill up the battery. So, but it is kind of fun to treat it like a water cooler. There's some interesting people that you can talk to at the chargers, and people have fun stories all the time about there was one guy who had planned a trip to Colorado, and they were like probably using something like that, a better route planner or something, and planning it so they had like 10% battery left. They charge up and then they go, and so it's yeah, fun to talk to people.
I love that. I find the same thing. Yeah.
I've had a couple experiences doing this, and we usually charge ours at home, but every once in a while we'll go down to Yakima to visit family, and we do have to charge on the way back. We plan it out to where we know we're going to have to stop for 20 to 30 minutes at a gas station where we charge our EV, and we're able to get snacks or stare at our phones, to be honest, for the next 20 minutes. So that's when we're driving that vehicle, we're planning ahead, and so we just think about it a little bit differently than if we were taking our truck.
Great. Michael, I wanted to get to this question. Will infrastructure of public charging stations be installed to match the increased number of EVs on the road, especially as 2030 and beyond approaches? So I know we talked about the grid, but what about charging infrastructure?
Yeah, that's something that's being worked on federal level, state level, and the PSE level. Washington State just got a healthy chunk of millions of dollars to invest in charging infrastructure, which they'll be using to improve major transportation corridors that are already underserved by public charging stations. They haven't announced where a lot of that funding is going yet because they just got it recently, but it should definitely increase charging stations in the next year or two. On the PSE level, we're installing public charging stations throughout our service area. We have 4 open now, 4 more already planned, more likely on the way after that. We're installing those in places where, as with the state, there just aren't public charging infrastructure right now along major corridors or in shopping centers. We're also going to be launching another program next year. It's a similar program that Seattle City Light has as well, to install level 2 charging on power poles. So those will be curbside charging stations. So you'll start seeing those pop up as well. So there's a lot of work being done to increase the capacity for public charging, as well as workplace and multifamily charging that I talked about earlier. But a thing to remember, and I can't remember the exact stat, but I did look it up for one of our last events. But I think it's over 85% of electric vehicle drivers do their charging at home, or just over 85% of electric vehicle charging is done at home. So even I would say that the lack of public charging stations is not necessarily something to stop people at the moment from buying EVs, though it's great to see it's increasing.
Great. On that topic, is it possible to charge any EV at any station, or do you need to find the right charging station based on your car make?
So in general, unless you have a Tesla, you can use any public charging station with any electric vehicle you have. Website like PlugShare, which I already mentioned, does tell you what types of connectors are available at charging stations, so you can look that up before you go, make sure it matches with your car. They typically have the two most common charging connectors for pretty much any EV sold in the US, with the exclusion of Tesla. Tesla does have its own network. Also, I'm sorry, this is new, but Rivian also has its own network. So I know Tesla sells a like $50 adapter that you can use to charge at non-Tesla charging stations. If you don't own a Tesla and want to charge at a Tesla charging station, they're slowly opening those up to other vehicles now. It hasn't become super widespread yet, but it does look like it's moving that way. And I've read some articles recently where prognosticators are thinking that the Tesla charging adapter is going to become standard moving forward, and that every vehicle will start using those. But that's pretty far off in the future, I think. But in general, if you're not a Tesla driver, you can charge anywhere.
Great. And then, Anne, do you have an idea of how much it costs to charge in public? And did you see any effect on your PSE bill when you got your EV?
We did not see any uptick in our electric bill when we started plugging in. So yeah, negligible for that part. What's the first part of the question?
Oh, do you have an idea, or could you give a range of what it costs to charge in public?
So since we're getting the 2 free years, it's kind of hard to see, but it does give you the amount and kind of what it would be. So $17 for a full charge for level 3. But I mean, since January, we've saved like $1,100 in gas compared to like $17. Like it's just makes a huge difference. I'm so happy we switched.
Yeah.
So,
I love that they give you an estimate. That's great. So it looks like we have time for one more question. So if we didn't get to your questions, we will definitely answer them after this event in the next couple days. So Michael, this one's for you. What is the life expectancy of the batteries? And generally, is it more or less to replace those, or to like, if you were comparing it to like rebuilding an engine?
Yeah.
Yeah,
right off the bat, I'm going to say I don't know the cost to rebuild an engine,
okay.
So I'm going to ignore that part of the question.
Okay.
The cost to replace an EV battery can be expensive. It's just super model dependent, and that can range anywhere from like $2,000 to like $20,000. I saw somebody being disbelieving about that amount in the chat, but it's true. They can be that expensive. The good news is you hopefully will not have to replace it. You likely won't. Batteries tend to be under warranty for a decade. Most Americans trade in their car before a decade is up. If you don't, there are also studies lately that have shown that while you do lose battery life, Adam mentioned it already. I think Megan did also. It's been a lot less than people initially feared with EV batteries. So even when even after a decade of driving, if the health of your battery has declined, you've maybe lost 30 miles of range. So it's not a huge hit, especially with newer models that have such higher ranges than we were used to seeing in the past. So yeah, it's expensive to replace a battery. Hopefully, if it happens, you're still under warranty. If not, you'll likely still have plenty of range to meet your daily driving needs with the existing battery.
Can I add on to this?
Yeah.
Please.
So I'm going to put in a plug for my brother's company. He came up with this. It's called Recurrent, and it is basically kind of like Carfax for your EVs with battery life. So they've got all these electrical scientists who have kind of researched and done all of this work to be able to kind of take a peek into your battery and your kind of the black box inside the car, because if you keep your battery in good health and like don't charge it above 80%, and your range will be way farther than what it says, and it can kind of give you an insight on how long your battery is going to last, like what it's going to do. So yeah.
Great. And that was Recurrent?
Yep, recurrent, and you can find it recurrentauto.com. So
Great.
it's kind of like
Thank
you
you.
sign up for, you put all your information in about your car, and they'll give you like a monthly report on how you're doing. So.
Fabulous. Well, we have just final reminders. I know we're at time, but wanted to share that you can check your email in the next few days for event resources. We will draw a winner and let you know if you're a winner today. There'll actually be 2 winners. And we will have a survey after today's event. We would love to hear feedback from you on what you're looking for from these events. And so once again, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to Anne for sharing your experience, and hope you all have a great rest of your day, and take care.